.36 in Trinidad and Tobago. It might be raining in the Southland, but the sun is coming up along the east-west corridor and in Port of Spain as we look towards the east, where there might be some grey cloud over the horizon, over the Laventille Hills, but the traffic is moving along on Tragrete Road, heading into and out of Port of Spain as we look at the cameras of traffictt.com. But there wasn't much movement for the Movement for Social Justice yesterday, because day 2 of their national motorcade was shut down because they didn't have permission from the police, and you would have followed it on the news yesterday right here on TV6, the explanation given by David Abdullah and his surprise that even though they didn't get the approval, there was a strong police presence for day 1 on Sunday. So quite obviously they were fully aware of the activity. But we do have the leader of the MSJ with us and long-time trade unionist David Abdullah with us this morning. Thanks very much for joining us once again. So what's the latest with that? You're all going to have day 2 of this motorcade?
Good morning to you and to all of your viewers and listeners. Yes, we are, and it's taking place on Thursday. Actually, just after I had the media conference yesterday morning at Paramount Building in the car park, I did get a call from Commissioner of Police, Mr. Gary Griffiths, indicating that he had been out of the country for a few days. He himself didn't see the letter. DCP Phillips, and I spoke to him Sunday afternoon, said he hadn't seen the letter. So I said to them, well, something is wrong in your office if emails come in and nobody checks your emails and reads the emails and so on. So Commissioner of Police Griffiths told me yesterday verbally that, you know, resend the information to him and it will be approved.
So the police is now a one-man show? Everything has to come to Gary for anything to get done?
Well, that could be a conclusion, yes, one could arrive at. But I mean, DCP Phillips did say that they facilitated us, even though he hadn't seen the letter on Sunday. But he was concerned about the traffic, and maybe he didn't want to take the decision to allow us to go through the traffic on Monday, which Commissioner Griffiths did. So perhaps
he didn't see the letter, but there was a strong police presence on Sunday.
There was a very strong police presence on Sunday. There were 5 marked squad cars, at least 2 unmarked vehicles, 2 motorcycle outriders. They, you know, stopped traffic to allow us to pass. You know, it was very well managed from a traffic point of view, and we got tremendous assistance from the police on Sunday. So when I asked DCP Phillips, well, how did you know if you didn't see the letter? How did you know about it? He said, well, somebody picked it up and told some officer, and that's how they found out about it. But if they didn't have, if they claimed we didn't have permission, they of course could have stopped us on Sunday. But he said he didn't want to be too rigid about it and facilitated us on Sunday. But we knew that we were going to have the second leg, as we would say, paraphrasing one of the Jamaican old reggae ska singers, Bongo.
I thought it was going to give us something from Buju.
No, not Buju. Bongo Jerry, I think it was, who said, sooner or later, but must. So it's Thursday.
But does that take this steam out of the effort to have that separation from day 1 to day 2 of this motorcade?
We lost the significance of having it yesterday. We wanted it yesterday, the second leg yesterday, because yesterday was the United Nations International Day for Human Rights.
Correct.
The 70th anniversary of this particular day. So there was symbolism. It was also the last day of the 16 days of activism on the issue of violence against
women and girls.
Yeah, so we thought that would also highlight that issue, as well as all the other problems that people are facing in the country. So we lost the symbolism of yesterday, but the fact that we're having it on Thursday will still enable us to make the statements that we want to make.
So just to let people be aware, so what is going to happen on Thursday? From where to where?
Right, we leave ODB2 Paramount Building at 8 o'clock in the morning. We head out on the highway, Solomon Hochoy Highway, because we did Claxton Bay on Sunday. We get back onto the Southern Main Road from the Rivulet Road, which is a Couva Point Lisa Sprisal flyover or exit, and from what is BC Roundabout, Wanderers Sports Club,
right.
that ground which is now used by W Connection and so on. From there we go along the Southern Main Road through Couva to Chaguanas, and then up to past Canoopia, up to Caroni, and then along the Caroni South Bank Road, Kelly Village to Piarco, and then we get to Arima, and then from Arima we head down the Eastern Main Road into Port of Spain.
And you're anticipating to arrive into Port of Spain at what time?
Well, it's a long route and there's traffic, so we plan to end by 6 in the evening.
6 in the evening. Again, obviously the intention is to highlight a number of different issues, but
yes.
What to you are you've lost the significance of Monday because of the human rights and those issues, but what is the real intention of this?
We need to highlight injustice in this country. You know, there's so many injustices taking place. Petrotrin workers, for example, I was talking to a couple of them yesterday, and some of them were saying, you know, we're being demonized as workers, that we were overpaid, not skilled, you know, didn't work, all of which are not true, of course. And they're saying that would make it difficult for them to get jobs elsewhere because they're being demonized and so on, the discrimination. And one work even said, you know, I worked for 38 years and I didn't even get a letter saying, thank you very much for the 38 years of service that you provided to the company. Not even a letter of thanks to the workers. They were treated horribly. Having to be told at the last minute you have to carry in BIR information and you drop it in a cardboard box on the ground somewhere. You know, that's people's personal information about their taxes and their incomes dropping in a cardboard box, unsupervised and that kind of thing. So people were just treated horribly. So it's about how people are being treated in Trinidad and Tobago, not just the Petrotrin workers or the tstt workers, but generally fast, how people are being treated by those in power and authority. Because people are treated badly. Those in power and authority don't care about how people live day to day.
But the issue is, David Abdullah, you are the leader of the Movement for Social Justice, which is a political movement, which is aspiring towards office. Otherwise, you wouldn't be in politics. So it will be seen purely from a political perspective in that context. Never mind the relevance of the many social issues that you will be highlighting, and therefore will be overtaken by the fact that David Abdullah is just trying to get attention for a dying party.
Well, some people will say that, and the sycophants will no doubt say that, and I have no problem with the sycophants saying that, and that's their right to say whatever they want to say. But there also is a growing number of people in the country who are fed up of the status quo, who don't like what is happening, and people come to me, people I meet on the street who come up to me and say, well, Mr. Abdullah, you have to do something about what's going on in this country, we can't take it anymore, and so on. So there are other people who say the opposite of that. And we are trying to connect with that mood of the country where people are feeling a lot of pain, a lot of hurt, a lot of anger, a lot of frustration, and to identify with that and to say, we are prepared to listen to what you have to say, and we understand your concerns and so on, and we're prepared to work with you and fight with you and struggle to bring about changes in your life through a fight for justice.
How do you do that, though, when you're on the outside looking in politically? Well,
ultimately, we have to be in. And that's the issue we confronted even very recently in a strategic planning session, which we've done more than once and so on. And the question is, what we want to do is to get to good governance, where we could have a better, not just good systems of governance with no corruption and stuff like that, but also to get to a better life for all. I see MP Suraj Ramachan suddenly waking up to the fact that 70%, 75% of the population work for less than $6,000 a month. I don't know how he just woke up to that when he was in government for 5 years.
Because he's in opposition, because
right.
they say
exactly.
one thing in office, they say something else in opposition.
Precisely, and this is why we're trying to be consistent about it, because I've always said that we have many different Trinidad and Tobagos. And so we need a better life, not just for the few, but we need a better life for everyone. And the question is, how do we get good governance? How do we get the resources of the country to subserve the common good, which is what the preamble to the Constitution commits us to. Can we do that by being outside, simply lobbying, advocating, writing memoranda, and so on? One of my colleagues, Clay Canada, was reminding me yesterday of a number of memoranda and recommendations that we have made over the years, either politically or through the unions and that kind of thing, and none of them have really been taken on at all. And therefore, ultimately, to bring about that change, you need to do two things. One, you need to change people's thinking so that they would recognize that we need to bring about fundamental change, something that we were saying off air just before we started.
Yeah.
And the second thing is to really have in government people who are truly committed to bringing about that change.
But the issue is, David Abdullah, to even get to that stage, I mean, I don't want to sound negative, and the point, we can say what we were talking about. We were talking about revolution, because Father Clyde Harvey quite often would be, when he was in Trinidad, I know he's based in Grenada now,
yes.
I would say that this country needs a revolution. Not a violent revolution, but a revolution in thinking.
That's right.
That brings about a fundamental shift in focus. But, David Abdullah, even if we are to assume that your movement is well intended, the real power brokers in Trinidad and Tobago, as with the real power brokers in many countries of the world, so-called democratic countries of the world, will ensure that your movement doesn't stand a chance.
Well, they would certainly work to try to achieve that, and that is one of the struggles that we have because the status quo does not concede their power and their wealth and their privilege easily.
Because they're going to mash up the place before that happens.
They will, yes, they will try, and therefore, but they are a minority of people in the country, and therefore it does require a revolution of the mind, and I do speak about a revolution of the mind needed and being necessary if we are to break the mold of the ethnic politics, because the ethnic politics is what supports and entrenches that power structure of the status quo and the elite. And so we are saying that we need to break that ethnic politics, because both the PNM and UNC are really the flip side of the same coin, which is why we are saying we're not the third force, we are the second force, because really the PNM and the UNC are the same force, and they maintain that status quo and maintain the elite in power. And that is a mindset that we have to change, and I think it is beginning to change now, and I've said that to you before.
Yeah.
But of course it's a process. And it's like water dropping perhaps on concrete. And you would think that there's nothing happening to the concrete, but ultimately that drop of water will create a crack, and then the crack opens up wide all of a sudden, and the concrete breaks apart, and change can come forth.
But even while that process is going on, there's so much that is happening in the Trinidad and Tobago of today. Let's get back to the petrotrin situation. Sure. for a bit, because I know obviously you're very, very close to that situation. Is the union proposal of ownership, is that dead and buried, as you understand it?
I know there was a meeting. As far as I know, the meeting did take place yesterday. I was informed there was a meeting yesterday afternoon at 2 o'clock. I don't know I haven't spoken to anybody since, so I don't know what the outcome of that meeting was. It was, as far as I know, between the board of, I don't know which company.
Whether it's Heritage or Paria.
Or the holding company or Petrotrin. The same persons are members of all those boards. And the union would have presented, for not the first time, would have presented even more details of its proposal. Now, is it dead in the water? Many people feel that it may be not because the proposal itself does not have merit, but because there were already commitments made from day one, given the different narrative that came out with respect to the refinery. Because remember, Mr. Espinay said, when the announcement was made at the end of August, no, we have no intention of selling the refinery, simply going to be closed down and so on. And then the Prime Minister then started talking about sale to the union under favorable terms. And then we've heard a different story now, requests for proposals to international firms, and initially for sale, now we're hearing for either lease or sale. So the goalposts keeps being moved, and the narrative keeps changing by the government with respect to the refinery. So it may be that somebody already has been lined up, in the same way that we saw Amalgamated getting the contract for security in petrotrin compounds and so on, rather than the permanent state police officers who knew the area and knew the operations and the fields and so on, continuing to work. So you're seeing the kind of people who are getting the contracts. Kenson got a big labor supply contract owned by former PNM Mayor of San Fernando, Kenneth Ferguson. So you're seeing things happening. You're seeing a BP type model operating in the fields, where it is labor supply contracts, and Robert Riley, ex-BP man, Lisa Ali, who was head of transition team, ex-BP person, Nigel Campbell, chief financial officer, ex-BP. So you're seeing a BP type model. Who got the contract to bring in the first set of refined products into Trinidad? A BP subsidiary. Now, I can't say that one is equal to the other, but I'm simply saying a particular model is being set up, and key players are doing that, and therefore one has to see what were the motives and the intents behind it. I think Mariana Brown was making that point to you.
Indeed, and of course we got a response from the PNM on certain issues related to that. But we'll take a quick break, because we have to fulfill some commercial obligations. We'll be right back with David Abdullah. Just to let you know that the West Indies against Bangladesh, the Bangladesh innings has just come to an end after 50 overs. 255 for 7, batting first. West Indies winning the toss and putting Bangladesh in. Remember, they have to win after they lost that match on Sunday. 255 for 7, Bangladesh batting first. They'll resume, they'll have part 2 of their motorcade on Thursday, having gotten the verbal approval of the Commissioner of Police. Even though he was out of the country, he was the one who intervened after they were denied the approval for yesterday, which was planned, but it's going to be from Thursday, and David Abdul will remind us of the details before we wrap up. But in the few minutes that we have left, David Abdullah, what do you see? If we're talking politically, economically, if we're talking about a revolution of the mind, if we're talking about a second republic, whatever you want to call it,
sure.
What do you see as the major challenge in trying to achieve that sort of objective?
Yeah, it's really two things. One is breaking the culture, which so many of our people are steeped in, the culture of the two parties, and therefore the race politics.
And the culture of race as well.
Yeah, and the culture of race.
As I was telling
yes.
you at the brand,
yes.
sorry,
yes.
that people who you would assume to be master's degrees, well-educated and so on, to pretty language and big jobs and so on, still think race.
Yes, but I think on the ground it is less so than at that level of the professionals and so on, who I think are more entrenched in that thinking, because you see the people on the ground, let's just take the petrotrin workers and tstt workers, those who are Afro-Trinidadian, with a government that is quite clearly PNM and Afro-Trinidadian or Trimbagonian in that sense, that party and that government has not done anything. In fact, they've done everything against the interests of the very people who, by ethnicity, they were supposed to be defending. I grew up in places like Lamantil and Carenage and so on, and I have to apologize because I was supposed to be back in Carenage about 2 weeks ago. I have to go there this week. And so there are people there who, traditional PNM areas, very strong PNM areas, who are saying that the PNM has done nothing for them. So that politics, I think, is beginning to break up at the grassroots level, which is really where the energy for change is going to come. The energy for change is not going to come from the elites and the professionals and those who are comfortable.
As we were saying in France, the ordinary people is the one who make noise.
That's right. Those who are comfortable with things as is. So it's going to come from those who are not comfortable, who are unhappy.
But those who are comfortable also have the revenue and the resources and the control of various arms of public dissemination of information, whether you call it media or whatever you call it, that they can continue to send you a particular message, that things are nice, Carnival coming, Christmas is here, enjoy yourself, have a good time. Forget about what David Abdullah and all these people want to stoke the fires of rebellion. Do you want to become a Venezuela? Be happy with the way things are.
Yeah, and there is a counter to that now through social media, actually, where the messaging can come out quite apart from Express and what we are doing here on TV6 and so on. And so messages do get out. And that's therefore the other challenge about the messaging, not only to the general public, but there's also a large number of young people in the country who really have grown up in a different time, a different period and so on, and who will be prepared, I think, to bring about fundamental change. And so those are the two sets of challenges. One, the messaging, getting that right, and also to reach younger people, not my generation, but my children's generation and so on. And secondly, to be able to break that mold of the two-party politics. It's not an easy challenge, but change is not an easy thing. And some of us just have that responsibility to bring about change. And I think it is beginning to shift. And the motorcade, the fact that on Thursday rather, we will have, I don't know, 40 cars, maybe 50 cars. So it's not a 1,000-car motorcade, but it'll be enough to let people know as we come along that route that people in Trinidad and Tobago can see that there are others who are prepared to take the fight to the status quo to bring about change.
We have just a few minutes left, David, and I just referenced the tomato situation we were talking earlier. Somebody was complaining that the price of tomato is $20 and they were griping about it and so on. Someone called subsequently and said, well, they leave it there to rot because they're not going to buy it. You said people come up to you and raise different issues, but are you seeing any change from those same people who will come up to you and say, you, David Abdullah, you go out there on the front line and take the blows. We go just stay here down in the back here and wait till things change. Are you getting any sense that people are inclined to be more participatory in our politics, not in terms of waving the flags, but standing up for what they believe to be right?
Yes, I think you've seen that in communities, but of course it is isolated, so you might see people in communities organizing themselves around their particular issues. And that's sometimes how these things start. And the question is now, do people recognize that they have a common interest, whether they're protesting against bad roads in Tabaquito, whatever, a problem with schools somewhere else? Do they see their issues being linked by the common issue of the system of governance that we have, and needing to change that system of governance and changing the way in which resources are allocated and used in the country so that everybody could have a better life? And those are the connections that we have to make in terms of people's consciousness and awareness.
Let me stoke the fires of fear about David Abdullah and his socialist agenda and his left-wing sort of attention. If I were, let's say, a big business, I would immediately, same way that Boris Johnson and them would have done a couple of years ago, look at the mess that they've created by stoking fear about all these brown people coming into your country, and now we see the mess. I put up an image of Venezuela about people eating from garbage bags and so on and whatever, and all that sort of thing. I should show you an image of what would appear to be poverty in Cuba and that sort of people leaving on boats from 20 years ago. Nobody has to know that image is from 20 years ago. Yes. I put it right there, and I put David Abdullah and his motorcade right there next to it. I said, do you want that?
Right, and interesting as you talk about that, even in the UK, there are conservative MPs and so on who talk about if you want Fidel Castro in 10 Downing Street, put Jeremy Corbyn.
Yes.
So that attack is even against Jeremy Corbyn in the UK.
But it works. That's the thing.
Well,
it works.
But Corbyn and the Labour Party is far more popular than Theresa May and the Conservatives right now, and would win
But
an
the point
election.
about the messaging, messaging of associating one with another.
That's right. They think that works. Okay, so my response to that, is to quote from an archbishop from Brazil who died some years ago, who said that when I say that, or when I give the hungry food, they call me a saint. And when I ask why are people hungry, they call me a communist. And therefore, the people who attack people like me have to therefore attack on the basis of the policies that we are advocating and the principles that we are putting forward, and what our track record has been in defense of ordinary people through many, many years. And yes, we are prepared to take on those attacks, and yes, we know it will come and so on. We are not trying to replicate Venezuela or Cuba and Trinidad and Tobago. Each country is very different, and our policy, which are out there on our website, our economic policy is there, our governance policy is out there and so on, and none of that speaks to anything about Cuba or Venezuela or anywhere else. And I was even asked in the industrial court when I gave evidence in the petrotrin matter the other day by senior counsel Sinas Jairam, said, Mr. Abdul, what's your ideology? He thought I would say something weird. I said, my ideology is social justice, which is in the preamble to the Constitution of Trinidad and Tobago, because it says in the preamble to our Trinidad and Tobago Constitution, we affirm our belief in the principles of social justice. And so if the preamble says social justice and goes on to say that the resources must subserve the common good, labor should not be exploited or forced to work in inhumane conditions, but people should advance on the basis of merit and integrity, that is what we believe in. And if therefore people say that is wrong, then we are saying that the Constitution of Trinidad and Tobago is wrong. We don't think so.
David Abdullah, thanks very much for joining us. The motorcade resumes on Thursday
morning,
what time?
8 o'clock from Paramount Building, and we head up the highway, then Rivulet Road, and from the BC roundabout, Southern Main Road, all the way up to Caroni, and then South Bank
Arima,
Road,
and then along
and then to Arima, and then Eastern Main Road, all the way to Port Spain, and we end up at Nelson Mandela Park.
Coming up towards 3 minutes after 7 o'clock in Trinidad and Tobago. Reminding you again, the West Indies have to get 256 to defeat Bangladesh to keep that one-day series alive.